Welcome back to the deep dive. We have got a really, really fascinating stack of notes to get through today.
We really do.
I mean, usually we are looking at one specific, tech, history, maybe a bit of psychology. But today we are looking at a collision, a massive, messy, high-speed collision between two worlds that honestly probably shouldn't be sharing the same road.
Right.
Yet here we are. We are looking at that very specific, often volatile intersection where high-stakes political commentary crashes headfirst into the world of pop culture celebrity.
It is the intersection where the rubber meets the road, or perhaps more accurately, where the Twitter thread meets the press release.
Yeah.
It's always a little bit of a disaster. You have the world of entertainment, which is ostensibly about escapism, art, and performance.
Right, the fun stuff.
And then you have the gritty, divisive, and often very serious reality of modern politics. And when those two things meet, it is rarely quiet.
Rarely quiet is the understatement of the sentence. So for today's deep dive, we are analyzing a specific discussion from the pop culture crisis.
Okay.
They recently sat down to break down the events surrounding the recent Martin Luther King Jr. Day Awards, and let me tell you, they had some thought.
I can imagine.
And the notes we have on their analysis, it is scathing, it is insightful, it's a lot to unpack.
They certainly did not hold back. And what is so interesting about this source material is that it acts as a perfect window into how different audiences perceive celebrity activism.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have the accolades and the applause, inside the industry bubble. And on the other hand, you have this deep, cynical skepticism from the outside looking in, asking what the mission actually is, the real goal here.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack how modern celebrities navigate this minefield. We're focusing specifically on Billie Eilish and the backlash she faced after receiving a certain award. But then, just to show how volatile this landscape, and because the source material goes, we're going to pivot to a separate but thematically related online feud.
Oh, this is the good stuff.
It's a really intense spat between Nicki Minaj and Don Lemon.
Which sounds like a fever dream matchup. I mean, if you had told me 5 years ago those two names would be in a headline together regarding political commentary, I wouldn't have believed you.
It really does sound like a simulation glitch. So the setup here is the juxtaposition of what the source calls wokeness accusations against genuine musical talent. It's the age-old question. Can you separate the art from the artist's political lecture? And does the audience even want to?
And I think we need to frame this as a case study in performative activism versus sincere conviction. That is the tension the source material is really grappling with.
Okay, performative versus...
Yeah. When does a speech become a performance? And more importantly, how do audience demographic dictate what a celebrity can and cannot get away with? Because as we will see, the rules are different for different people.
They really are. So just to tease what's coming for you, we've got environmental justice, we've got accusations of gentrification in East LA involving Billie Eilish's family, and we have a Twitter war involving a cable news anchor and the Barbets.
Oh, boy.
Let's get into it.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's start with the event itself. Section 1. The award and the context here is MLK Day. Billie Eilish attends this special award ceremony. Now, set the scene for us, because this wasn't just, a random red carpet.
Right. This wasn't the Grammys or the VMAs. This was the MLK Junior Society.
Yeah.
This is a legacy institution with a lot of historical weight attached to it. So the setting itself carries a certain gravitas.
A lot of weight.
A ton. And the award she received was titled the Beloved Community Environmental Justice Award.
Beloved Community Environmental Justice. That is a mouthful of a title.
It is.
It sounds like they tried to fit every possible buzzword into one plaque, like a word salad of activism.
It is a very specific, very dense title. And just to place her in the room, she wasn't the only heavy hitter there. This is important context. Viola Davis was honored.
An absolute legend.
Right. She got the Coretta Scott King Woman Soul of the Nation Award, and LeBron James's foundation took home the Community Youth Influencer Award.
Okay, so you have these titans of industry and culture, Viola Davis, an acting legend, LeBron James, arguably the biggest athlete on the planet.
Right.
And then right there alongside them, you have 22-year-old Billie Eilish.
Exactly. And that's the juxtaposition that the source material immediately latches on.
So the source material we were looking at, they didn't exactly frame this as a prestigious honor for her, did they? They didn't seem to think she fit the room.
No, not at all. Not even a little bit. The source took a very cynical view of this inclusion. They framed this accolade as, and I'm quoting the sentiment from the discussion here, basically a trophy for being the wokest, most annoying, obnoxious pop star.
Ouch! That's direct.
It is incredibly harsh. But let's look at the argument behind the insult, because there is a logic there, at least from their perspective. The source suggests that this was essentially a participation award.
A participation award? For what? For being famous and young?
Kind of. They argue that the motivation behind it wasn't necessarily merit-based in the traditional sense of, decades of effective activism on the ground.
Right. It's not like she's been running a nonprofit.
Precisely. The source argues it was more of a strategic move meant to generate publicity for the nonprofit organization itself.
So it's the celebrity economy in action.
It is exactly that. If you give an award to a scientist who has been quietly working on climate models for 30 years, that is noble. It is the right thing to do.
Sure.
But does it get headlines? Does it get clicks? Does it get the 16-year-olds talking about the MLK Junior Society? Probably not.
But you give it to Billie Eilish.
Suddenly, the MLK Junior Society is trending on Twitter and TikTok. Her fans are sharing clips. It's a massive PR win for them, at least in terms of visibility.
So it is a symbiotic relationship. She gets the credibility of the MLK brand, the moral weight of it, and they get the reach of her, 100 million plus Instagram followers.
That's the argument. A transaction of cultural capital.
But let's look at how she actually handled. We have the analysis of her acceptance. And what struck me from the source notes is her tone. She didn't walk up there acting like she owned the place or deserved it.
No, quite the opposite. The first thing she did was express that she felt undeserving of the honor. She started with humility.
Which, to be fair, is a standard move. Oh, I'm not worthy, that.
Sure, it is a trope. You hear it all the time. But that kicked off what the source describes as a broken narrative.
What do they mean by broke?
Usually an award speech is celebratory. You say, thank you, this is amazing, look at the great work we're doing, the future is bright, optimism.
Right, inspire the people.
Eilish went the other way. She wasn't celebrating progress. She was highlighting how far backward she feels things are going. She described the country and the world as being in a state where justice feels less achievable than ever.
Which is a pretty heavy way to open and accept. Thanks for the award, by the way. Everything is falling apart.
Exactly. It's a complete tonal shift from what you'd expect. And she didn't speak in vague platitudes. You know how sometimes celebrities say, we need more love, or let's all just come together.
Yeah, the meaningless stuff.
She didn't do that. She brought a laundry list of specific grievances. The source really focuses on this part.
Walk us through that list, because the source notes highlight this as a defining moment for her public persona.
Okay, so she went down the line. She talked about neighbors being kidnapped, and she specifically mentioned icy immigration and customs enforcement in that context.
Wow.
So right out of the gate, she is hitting federal immigration policy.
At an MLK Day event, no less.
At an MLK Day event. Then she talked about peaceful protesters being assaulted and murdered. This is clearly referencing the social justice movement and the clashes we have seen in recent years.
Okay, so she's not holding back.
Not at all. And she didn't stop there. She brought up civil rights being stripped away. She talked about resources for fighting the climate crisis being cut in favor of fossil fuels.
Big one.
A huge one. Then she mentioned animal agriculture destroying the planet, which we know is a huge personal platform for her as a vegan.
Right, that's her thing.
And she capped it off by saying healthcare is becoming a privilege for the wealthy rather than a human right. I mean, she covered almost every major progressive talking point in about 2 minutes.
It's basically the entire progressive platform in one speech. It's a manifesto.
It is. And she made a direct political attack, stating clearly that protecting the planet and communities is not a priority for this administration. She didn't name names, but the target was crystal clear.
Now, here is where it gets funny, or at least where the source material finds. They make a comparison that I honestly hadn't thought of, but once you hear it, you can't unhear.
I think I know where you're going.
They compared her to Jaden Smith.
Lesson. Yes, the J.D. Smith comparison. This is a deep internet cut for sure.
Right.
The source specifically referenced that interview a 15-year-old Jaden Smith did years ago, where he asked very earnest, can we just talk about the political and economic state of the world?
Which has become such a massive meme. It's the ultimate I am 14 and this is deep moment. It's shorthand for a certain kind of youthful profundity.
It has.
Yeah.
And the source is using that comparison to highlight a specific perception. Young celebrities waxing poetic and trying to be profound. There is a sense from the source that despite the serious topic she is listing, it comes off as a bit.
Edison.
A little juvenile.
Yeah. Like a teenager discovering these issues for the first time and assuming no one else.
Right, like, guys, have you heard about the environment? It's really bad. We should do something. Why aren't we talking about this when literally everyone is talking about it? The source suggests it lacks nuance. It feels like she is reciting a Twitter thread rather than offering a unique, seasoned insight based on experience.
But this brings us to the second section of our dive, which is the economics of why she does, because you might think, wow, listing all these controversial topics is risky for a pop star.
You would think so.
But the source material brings up a really interesting industry theory called the four-quadrant theory that suggests maybe it isn't risky at all. In fact, maybe it's the safest thing she could do.
This is a fascinating bit of inside baseball. The expert in the source breaks down why musicians seem to make these polarizing statements while actors, especially big movie stars, tend to be more reserved, more cautious.
So break it down for us. What is the four-quadrant?
So in the movie business, a massive blockbuster, think Marvel, think Top Gun, think Avatar, is designed to be four-quadrant.
Four-quadrant.
That means it needs to appeal to men, women, the young, and the old. All four quadrants of the demographic chart.
You need the teenage boy and his grandmother to both buy.
Exactly. You need everyone. And because you need everyone to make that billion-dollar box office, you have to be very, very careful. If you alienate one of those groups, say, by getting too political or taking a hard stance on a divisive issue, you hurt the bottom line.
You lose a whole quadrant.
You lose 25% or 50% of your audience, potentially. You can't be Captain America if half the country thinks you hate them. You can't be Maverick.
Right. You have to be broad. You have to maintain that universal appeal.
But pop music. The source argues that pop music is fundamentally different. It is, and this is their phrase, laser-focused on specific demographic. It doesn't need to appeal to everyone. It needs to appeal to its people, its tribe.
So when we analyze Eilish's comments through this lens, what does that tell us?
Her comments are safe. In fact, they're more than safe. They're beneficial. The source notes that nothing she's saying is going to upset her specific fan base.
Who they identify as.
They identify her fan base as the gays, young progressives, Gen Z girls who are already posting these exact same sentiments on TikTok and Instagram.
So she isn't risking anything. She is preaching to the choir. She's just validating what her audience already believes.
Economically speaking, yes. She is signaling to her core consumer that she shares their value. If a 55-year-old conservative man in the Midwest gets angry at her speech, doesn't matter. He wasn't going to stream her album anyway. He wasn't going to buy the concert ticket. So she loses nothing. In fact, the outrage from the other side might even endear her more to her fan. It creates an us versus them dynamic.
That is a really cynical but probably very accurate way to look at it. It's audience capture. But the source material does make a distinction here between her persona, this activist branding, and her actual talent.
Yes, and this is important.
And I found this refreshing because usually when sources critique wokeness, they dismiss the talent entirely. They say, oh, they're just noisy because they can't sing. But they didn't do that here.
No, they didn't. And that's what makes their critique more interesting. The source argues that Eilish is legitimately talented, and that is actually the source of their frustration. They call it the tragedy of politics.
The tragedy of politics.
They feel her talent is so undeniable that the political annoyance is unnecessary. She doesn't need the gimmick to get attention.
They even referenced a Rick Beato video to back this up. For those who don't know, Rick Beato is this huge music theory guy on YouTube. He is like the professor of rock and roll.
Right. He is a serious musician. He breaks down the mathematics of why songs. So the source mentions Beato analyzed the Grammy nominees recently.
Okay.
And he pointed out that most of the nominees had sampled melodies, derivative lyric, essentially copy-paste music.
The algorithm music, the kind of stuff that's designed to go viral on a 15-second clip.
Exactly. But he singled out Eilish's song, Wild.
And what was the verdict on Wildflower?
Beato, and by extension the source, labeled it as the only one requiring genuine vocal talent and being objectively interesting from a musical composition standpoint. The chord structures, the melody, the vocal performance, it was real music.
Wow.
So you have this dynamic where the source is saying, we hate the speech, we roll our eyes at the politics, but we cannot deny the song. It's a real conflict for them as critics.
That is a tough spot to be in for a critic. But there is another layer here. We talked about performative activism earlier. Does the source think she is faking it? Is this just a cynical marketing strategy derived from that four-quadrant theory? Or does she act believe?
Surprisingly, the source leans towards sincerity. The host in the source notes that, despite all the criticism, they believe Billie Eilish is sincere. They don't think it is performative in the sense that she is lying or reading a script she doesn't believe in.
Why? What makes them think that? What's the evidence for sincerity?
Because of her background. The source describes her parents as, and I'm quoting again, insane hippie libs.
Laughs, insane hippie lives. Okay, tell me more.
Their words, not mine. But the point is, she was raised in this environment. She has been a vegan since she was a little kid. Her parents were actors and musicians in Los Angeles who were deeply embedded in this progressive culture.
So it's not a new development for her?
Not at all. So when she gets on stage and talks about animal agriculture destroying the planet, that isn't a PR talking point handed to her by a manager. That tracks with her entire upbringing. She essentially is who she was raised to be.
So it is authentic, even if they find it annoying.
Exactly. And that's a key distinction. Authenticity doesn't always mean universal appeal. You can be authentically irritating to people who disagree with you.
Okay, so we have established she is talented and she is sincere. But that doesn't mean she is immune to the H word, hypocrisy.
Ah.
Section 3 of our outline gets into the allegations of hypocrisy that the source unpacked, and this is where it gets really complicated for her.
And this is where the source really sharpens the knife. It's one thing to be annoying, it's another to be a hypocrite. There are two main controversies here. The first one is what we call the perfume predicament.
The perfume predicament. Okay, set the scene.
So in the speech, remember, she is decrying the state of the world. She is implying capitalism is failing us, resources are being stripped, the climate is collapsing due to consumption.
Right, the system is broken.
But at the same exact time this is happening, she is launching and promoting a new perfume luxury consumer good.
And not just selling it, but teaching people how to buy refills. It's a full commercial push.
Right. It's a whole marketing campaign. And the source cites a specific comment from a viewer that really cuts to the core of this. The commenter accused her of being a shill.
A shill.
They said essentially, this person will tell you capitalism's inhumane and then immediately shill her perfume. It points out the massive tension between the anti-capitalist message and the extremely capitalist behavior of being a global celebrity brand.
And there was a specific, darker accusation attached to that perfume in the source, wasn't
there? There was. And we have to be very clear, this was a user comment cited by the source, not an investigative report from them.
Got it.
But the comment accused her of selling perfume potentially made by Chinese slaves. Now, the source admits they have no context or verification on the manufacturing process.
But they raised the point.
They raised the point and noted that it is not unlikely given how global supply chains work for many consumer products. But the core conflict is that tension. You can't stand on a podium and attack the system while aggressively participating in the most commercial aspect of it. Merchandise.
It's the classic champagne socialist critique. But the second controversy is even more specific, the gentrification con. This one I hadn't before.
This is a deep cut. The claim is that Billie Eilish's family helped gentrify an entire East LA neighborhood, specifically Highland
Park. For those who don't know LA, that is ground zero for the gender debate.
It is. It's the poster child for it. So what are the details? The source digs into the specific. It seems to stem from her parents buying a neighboring home.
The house next door.
The house next door. Apparently, the house next door to where they lived was raided by law enforcement. It was a known trouble spot.
Okay, so a drug bust or something similar.
Something like that. It became a distressed property. So it was put up for sale. Eilish's mother is quoted as saying they bought it to have control over their neighborhood.
Control over their neighborhood. That's a loaded phrase. That can be interpreted in a lot of ways.
It is incredibly loaded. It implies a desire to curate who lives next to you, to manage the environment, and then they renovated it. Critics, according to the source, say they stripped the historic character of the home, and then, this is the kicker, they sold it.
For a profit.
For the highest price they could possibly get, according to the mother. And they sold it to a couple with no criminal past.
Oh, wow. So they said the quiet part out loud.
They really did.
Yeah.
So the narrative here is a well-off white family moves in, buys the cheap house next door that had undesirable people in it, fixes it up, flips it for a fortune, and handpicks safer people to move in, which in turn drives up property values for everyone.
That's the textbook definition of gentrification on a micro level.
That is the accusation. The source notes that critics view this as house flip, that accelerated displacement in an area that was already struggling with rapid gentrification.
And there was something about how Eilish described the neighborhood.
Yes. There was also a mention that Eilish has faced backlash for referring to the neighborhood pre-gentrification as a hipster block party, which some feel ignores the working-class immigrant families who are actually living there and being pushed out.
It erases the actual community to focus on the aesthetic.
Right. It frames it as a cool, edgy place for artists rather than a home for family. But there is a defense, right? It wasn't just a slam dunk accusation in the source.
The defense is the timeline. The family moved there in 2001. That was well before the massive wave of gentrification really took hold. They bought for affordability because they weren't rich back then. Remember, they were working actors, not superstars, and they aren't large-scale developers. It was a single home renovation next door to where they lived for their own sense of security.
This leads to what the expert in the source calls the no-win scenario regarding gentrification.
It is an interesting philosophical point. The logic goes like this. If people move into a neighborhood and improve the safety or livability renovating homes, making it nicer, it is called gentrification. And that is bad because it pushes people out.
Right, that's the critique.
But if they leave, if they say, okay, this neighborhood is too rough for us, we won't stay here, we'll go to the suburb, then it is called white.
You lose either way.
Exact. The source argues there is no winning in that for certain. If you stay and improve, you are a colonizer. If you leave, you are abandoning. It highlights how tricky these narratives are when applied to families versus...
And speaking of messy, let's pivot.
Nuts.
We are moving from the participation award and these complicated real estate debate to a full-blown flame war.
Oh, here we go.
Section 4. Nicki Minaj versus Don Lemon.
This is a tonal shift, to say the least, from an earnest speech to a Twitter beat.
The source material pivots from Eilish to this absolute clash of titans. And honestly, it is the kind of thing that makes you stare at your phone and wonder what timeline we are living in.
Absolutely. So what was the inciting incident here? Why are Nicki Minaj and Don Lemon fighting? It started with Don Lemon being spotted at an anti-ICC protest at a church.
Okay, so a similar theme to Eilish's speech immigration enforcement. It all comes back around.
Right. But Don Lemon, being a journalist, at least at the time, claimed he was just doing journalism. He said he was filming inside the church and facilitating the coverage, not participating as a protester.
This is a very fine line to walk for a reporter.
A very fine line. And there was legal risk involved.
The source mentions there was an investigation into whether his presence constituted a felony participation in the protest. Because if you are inside the restricted area, the line between reporter and participant can get very blurry very fast.
And how did Nicki Minaj enter the chat? How did she get involved?
Nicki Minaj saw this and seemingly called out what she saw as hypocrisy. She sent a tweet attacking Lemon. She didn't hold back.
She rarely does.
No. She used slurs. She made a play on his name, Sucking Lemon, which the source notes has pretty obvious homophobic undertones given Lemon is openly gay. And she called him a thug.
A thug? That's a racially loaded term to use against a black man.
A very loaded term. She said she wanted that thug in jail. She criticized him for what she viewed as his hypocrisy regarding his treatment of other religions versus this protest. It was a very aggressive, very direct attack.
And Don Lemon, he's a news anchor. He didn't just let that slide, did he?
No, he released a video response, and the source describes this as Lemon queening out.
Queening out. Explain that term in this context.
It means he dropped the serious news anchor facade and got sassy. He leaned into the drama. He decided to fight fire with fire. He called Minaj unhinged and a homophobic bigot.
Okay, so he went for the jugular, too.
She did. He told her to stop talking about things she knows nothing about. But then he started listing what he claimed were facts about her. And this is where the source material does some real-time fact-checking, which is fascinating.
Let's walk through the facts according to claim number 1 from Don Lemon. Minaj is an undocumented citizen.
What's the verification on that?
False. The source clarifies that while Minaj is not a U.S. citizen, she's from Trinidad, she is a lawful resident with a green card. She is here legally.
So that's just incorrect.
It is. The source also adds a bit of editorializing here, arguing that she contributes more to the economy than the people Lemon was defending at the protest.
Okay, so that was claim 1. What was claim number 2?
Lemon stated Minaj has family members who are sex offenders.
And the verification.
True. The source confirms this is factually true. Her husband and her brother are both convicted sex offenders.
Wow. So he went there? That's a low blow, but it's a factually accurate one.
He went all the way there. And then there was the insult about the doll.
Right, the pick-me insult.
Lemon told her to replace the Chucky doll in her tweet with a pick-me doll.
Explain what pick-me means in this context.
It's an insult for someone, usually a woman, who is seen as desperately seeking approval from a dominant group, in this case, by siding against her own community. He was framing her as someone who doesn't care about African Americans or gay people and is just trying to get brownie points from the other side.
So who won this feud? What is the verdict from the source material?
The source argues that Lemon, despite having some facts on his side regarding the family members, lacks the charisma to win a flame war against Nicki Minaj.
You don't go to war with the Barbies. That is rule number 1 of the internet.
You really don't. The source described Lemon as too measured. Even when he was trying to be shady, he was trying to queen out, as they put it, but it didn't land effectively against Minaj's sheer
So his delivery was off.
Yeah. In the court of public opinion, or at least the court of the internet, Minaj's chaotic energy overpowers Lemon's news anchor delivery.
It is the difference between a street fighter and a boxer. One is playing by a certain set of rules, and the other just isn't.
Precise. All right, let's zoom out. We're in our final section now. Section 5. Synthesis and historical context. We have looked at Eilish. We have looked at Minaj and Lemon. What connects these stories? How does the source tie it all together?
Well, let's go back to the participation award culture. The host and expert in the source really hammer home the idea that these awards, like the one Eilish got, are often just ego boosts or publicity stunts.
It's not about the work, it's about the ops.
Exactly. They aren't necessarily about the work, they are about the brand association. And there was a surprising historical nugget they dropped to prove this point about awards not always aging well.
Yes, the Donald Trump connection. I did not see that coming in the notes. I had to read that part twice.
It is a great piece of trivia, and it really makes you think. The source points out that Donald Trump received the Ellis Island Medal of Honor back in the 90s.
Okay.
And who did he receive it alongside? Rosa Parks and Muhammad Ali.
That is a wild lineup. Donald Trump, Rosa Parks, and Muhammad Ali all on the same stage getting the same award.
It is, and the source uses this to highlight the irony and the transient nature of these honors. Back then, Trump was accepted in these elite circles. He was getting the good guy awards.
Yeah.
It shows how fluid these reputations are and how these awards are often snapshots of a cultural moment rather than definitive, lasting judgments on character.
So if we connect the dots between the Eilish story and the Lemon Minaj story, what is the big picture?
I think the parallel the source draws is that both stories illustrate the messy intersection of celebrity status, political performance, and public scrutiny.
It's all a performance.
In a way, yes. Whether it is a polished, well-rehearsed acceptance speech at an MLK gala or a raw, unhinged Twitter feud, celebrities are constantly navigating their brand against their personal convictions or what they present as their personal convictions.
And the audience, us, the listeners, you at home, we are the judge, jury, and executioner in the court of public.
We are. We decide if it is sincere, like Eilish, even if the source finds it annoying, or if it's a flame war win like Minaj. It is all performance art in the end, and we're the ones buying the ticket.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap the main takeaways. We have Billie Eilish winning a woke award and giving a speech that lists every problem in America,
which the source sees as sincere but economically safe for her specific demographic. It's not a risk.
Right. Then we have the accusations of hypocrisy selling perfume while decrying capitalism, and the gentrification controversy, which complicates that activist label
A lot.
And then, on the other side of the coin, we have the vicious stalemate between Nicki Minaj and Don Lemon, proving that when politics gets personal and messy, facts sometimes take a backseat to charisma and sheer force of will.
Absolutely. It's about who controls the narrative, not necessarily who has the better argument.
Leaving us with this final provocative thought from the source material. They mentioned that Billie Eilish doesn't need to do this to be famous of her talent. She has the wildflower vocals, she has the musical chops, confirmed by people like Rick Beto. She doesn't need the speech. She could just sing and sell millions of records.
And that raises the question, does talent today require a political platform to remain relevant? Can you just be a singer anymore? Or is silence the ultimate luxury that the modern celebrity just can't afford anymore?
Something for you to think about next time you see a pop star trending for their opinions rather than their... Thanks for diving deep.
We'll catch you on the next.